Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Eigen TV. Today, I'm joined by both Joel and Cesar. Joel is our Chief Commercial Officer here at Eigen, and Cesar is an independent oil and gas professional with lots and lots of different experience. And I understand that you both have known each other for quite some time. Today's topic is really around asset management in the digital era. And I know that there's been an awful lot of conversation, especially around digitalisation as well. And that's something that we at Eigen obviously have been covering. So if you're happy to be here on the channel at the moment, please do have a look at some of the other playlists. But ahead of that, I'm very excited to jump straight into the conversation. So would you like to both just maybe talk a little bit about how you know each other and if you've got any fun stories that you would like to share?
Absolutely. Thanks, Effie. Yes. So yeah, I've known Cesar for a long time now. We used to work together in PDVSA back in Lake Maracaibo producing district. And so Cesar was one of my internal clients within PDVSA. I was leading a group developing advanced applications in those days, back in the 90s, end of the 90s, beginning of 2000. And we used to have a lot of discussions about what's next in digitalization, known as digital oil field in those days. And always, some really good conversations and ideas from Cesar. So what's your recollection, Cesar? What do you remember?
Well, really, first of all, thank you very much, Effie and Joel, for this opportunity, to have a chat and to start remembering things that we did in the past as a first stage, and then trying to forecast, what sort of things need to happen now and going to happen in the future. Really, I think my experience working with Joel was really a very exciting and tremendous story that we built together. Nowadays, most of the companies are talking about digitalization, okay, but we used to call it 20 years ago automation. Okay, it's basically the same thing. Nowadays, what we have is better, probably better sensors, better future data points, etc. Okay, and now we have more tools. But it's exactly the same thing that we used to do in the past, 20 years ago, and even more. Okay, so I'm very glad to talk about those experiences.
Absolutely, and build on it for the future. So yeah, we got together, we got in contact recently, and we started writing a series of blogs on managing the asset in this digital era. And you can go to the Eigen website. There's, the blogs are there. You can go through them. They've had an interesting following from the community in LinkedIn as well. And we started the blogs by talking about the important topic of choke models. And the choke model, the integrated choke model, is a framework, I would say, to understand how to evaluate, let's say, opportunities within the asset, and then how digitalization and digital tools play a role into that. Cesar, can you explain to us what that is?
Yes, basically the choke model is, as you perfectly said, is a framework in which we're trying to put together all the different elements that compose a petroleum or oil and gas field. Okay. And we're splitting into different pieces, and the comprehension of the whole package is the ones that basically will allow us to identify which are the levers that really accompany increasing the value of that asset. For example, one typical case is that when you are restricted in the surface, you have restriction in the surface system, and you are investing and drilling more wells and more wells and more wells, and you have a bottleneck in the system. Okay, despite that you are increasing the investment in the wells, eventually you will not get the full value because you forgot about one of the pieces. And understanding this from an integrated point of view will allow you to maximize the benefit of any investment you do. Okay, instead, eventually, in this particular case of drilling so many wells, eventually you have to reduce the number of drilling wells, drilled, and invest a little bit in increasing the capacity of the platforms, things like that. Okay, so that's quite important to be understood by the whole team. And another aspect that I believe is crucial is that you understand that the asset team understand what's the value of each of them in the entire value chain. Okay, because everybody in an asset has something to do, has something to say that is relevant for the final benefit. So I believe that comprehension, that frameworks allows really to understand this integration and allows to understand the value of each of our knowledge, of our actions into the final value of the asset.
Okay, yeah, that's very important. And so what is the role of digital technologies within this framework, Cesar?
I believe digital technologies are crucial. Well, first of all, there are 4 pillars that are really crucial when you are, working in an asset, and they have to do with the management of data, the right processes, have the right processes, have the right tools, digital tools, or any tools that you may have, or technologies, and finally having the right people. Okay, so if you have these 4 pillars and one of them is failing, eventually the results are not going to be the most the optimum ones. Okay, and digital tools and everything related to the hardware, and the software, and the hardware are a very important component in the technology we're using in a field. Okay, because basically those technologies will enable a lot of improvement. For example, will enable processes, the way you do, the way you work, okay, and enable the visualization of data, and you will be able to see things that we're not capable to see before, prior to having these digital technologies. So I believe they are crucial, really, to identify opportunities. How can we identify opportunities? In many ways. For example, when you're measuring different data points, you're able to correlate dependencies in between cause and effect, for example. And understanding and doing a proper comprehension of that data will allow you to really identify what is causing what. Okay, and doing this assessment, you can even anticipate failures, and you can even detect what is causing you a deferred production, for example. Okay. And unless you have those technologies, unless you have this data gathering, unless you have the proper processes to interpret that data, unless you have the proper people, okay, you may be really forced to not getting the best results in your asset. So I believe integrating these 4 pillars is crucial, and having the right technology for sure is the key enabler. Okay, to get the right data, to have the right processes, and to have the right people applying knowledge to that data.
I love the 4 pillars, and I think it's not just oil and gas. Like, you can see that in other industries as well, especially around digitalization. I think what would be really interesting, given the fact that you both have such a strong history within this industry as well, and the knowledge that you have, actually, the evolution of those 4 pillars, like how have they moved on throughout the years, and have you seen that projects, I know you mentioned that people can sometimes isolate in one area and not contemplate other areas. Has there ever been examples where where maybe they've been only implemented 3 of the pillars, and it's had a positive or negative effect on that project?
I think the initial tendency from operators was to focus on technology, but I think pretty much from maybe 8-10 years ago, everybody started realizing that all the other factors were as important. But it's always, I think it's still up to today, it's still a temptation to only focus on the technology side of things and not on the organization, people, processes that need to go around it. It just depends, on the maturity of each company on addressing their own digitalization programs. So, Cesar, what's your experience? I mean, you've been an operator.
Well, my experience is that, depending on companies, there are companies that are really focused on understanding, what's the value of this digital transformation. The most recent experience I have, we try to give a lot of emphasis on these different pillars. In that sense, I think it was a great opportunity to try working in the different areas. But for example, I see a lot of advertisement in the internet, and also in magazines that I read. And I have the feeling that there are a lot of people that have the tendency to visualize digitalization as a kind of IT project, you know. It's a new IT project. Okay, let's implement these new tools or this new software or this new tool. And really, I think this is a big mistake. Companies are selling digitalization or digital transformation just by implementing tools, okay, without taking into account transformation of processes, transformation of people, because people will have to be transformed as well in terms of skills, okay? You need to upskilling the people again, because now you are using new tools, new technologies, new type of sensors. They need to understand how they will use that and apply their knowledge, okay? So unless you understand it as a whole thing moving forward, okay, you will not take advantage of this new data you're receiving, okay?
That's really interesting, Cesar, because I think I was having a conversation with Murray the other day. So for anyone watching, Murray's our CEO of Eigen, and we were having a conversation about data. And one of the comments that he said to me as we were recording for our session was, you know, data is only ever as good as what you put in. So, you know, people say, okay, data needs to start at the beginning of that transformation process because that's what drives decisions and actions. And then by the time it reaches the end, which is the people and the actual business change element when you're actually landing something. So, but it was really interesting because he was kind of raising that point. So we all talk about, you know, we have tools that help us collate data from different areas and then enables us to give people a view. So we have our Ingenuity platform, for example, but it's only as good as what we put in. And that's why I was asking about the evolution, because there's still legacy stuff that exists that people have to essentially work with in order for that transformation to happen. So I just wanted to put that out there really. And
yeah, I mean, I think, well, one just talking about the technological area alone, you obviously technologies that are working in the real world need to adapt to the fact that there is legacy information, legacy data. And we've encountered that here in the office. I mean, we've had to deal with importing of data from Excel sheets because it's just not in any other database, you know, and that's fine. So I think technology solutions need to be adapted to the reality of things. Not everything's going to be automated initially, and that you need to find ways to acquire that data and validate that data in a way that is makes sense for the whole workflow.
Yeah.
But there was something I just want to do with Cesar is take an example. Let's take an example, Cesar, and go through all the pillars on it. And the example I have in my head is deferred production. So how it was in deferred production in the past, and how each one of the pillars can contribute to improving that process. So let me start. So at the beginning of time, you only had well tests once a month, right? Or maybe even longer. And so you would only find out when a well was producing not what it's supposed to, 30 days later, or even 60 days later, if the well went down just immediately after the previous well test. So how did it evolve from there?
Well, that's quite interesting. I think it's been a lot of evolution from those times. That, to be honest, you know, in the last years, I remember visiting fields that were already in that age. Okay, particularly very mature oil fields, very old oil fields, where investment is an issue. Okay, tend to stay in the old fashion. Okay, because there is not a capex to be invested in new technology for those very old fields. But for example, things that have happened from those days in which you had to measure the well every month or once a month or every 2 months. First of all, we digitalized a lot of variables. You know, for example, you can digitalize the wellhead pressure. You can digitalize the casing head pressure. The casing head pressure. You can have sensors at the entrance of the flow station. Different sensors that at least tells you in a continuous fashion a signal saying that this well is alive. Okay, at least saying, okay, the well is alive. And from that point, I mean, nowadays there are a lot of data coming from the well, for example, downhole pressures, downhole temperatures, wellhead data. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when you have artificial lifting, you have a lot of information coming from, if you are using an electrosubmersible pump, you have information coming from the variable speed driver at surface, sending signals about amperage, voltages, and frequencies. Also, when you have a soccer rod pump, you have sensoring also at the wellhead and also in the soccer rod pump itself. Okay. That means that you have tons of data coming to your office and coming to your laptop every single second. And I'm going to catch with the comment you made, Effie, regarding the previous interview you did. I believe that the value of data is high if you have somebody to interpret the data with high understanding.
Yeah.
That means that you can have all data, but if you have a proper a proper person with the right skills to interpret that data, then you're losing money because you're getting data that nobody's going to understand or interpret. Okay, and that's crucial. That's the value of the knowledge applied to this new digital world. That's what there are 4 pillars. I mean, as I said, first of all, sensoring evolved a lot in those timing. Then processes. For example, in the past, the only way for you to know if the well was okay was even doing these measurements every 2 months or every month, or going to visit the well. Okay, you had to go to visit the well physically, take pressures, take data from the gauges that you had in front, pneumatic gauges mainly, and take the pressures and just check that information. Okay, once you have this digitalization, now you have this information already at your hands, so you don't need to go and visit the well. Eventually, you have to transform that people instead of just going to pick data, now to do proper maintenance to the field, to the wells, for example. Okay, so there's a transformation. Also, you don't need to make so many visits to the well because you have all the data in front of you every single second. That means that you can optimize the number of boats to go to the wells, or if you need trucks, you can optimize the transport of the entire crew to go and take the data because now you have the data already at your hand. So the processes will evolve thanks to this new enabling technology. Then the data itself will give you possibilities to correlate different variables. So this huge amount of data will allow you to improve the models you are creating, to not only to detect deviation, but also to forecast the behavior of a particular variable in the future. Now you're looking at the future thanks that you validated the data, you contrast it you make contrast with the models you are creating, and the model is being used for making forecasts. So now you're anticipating what's going to happen in the future, saying that you have a proper understanding and comprehension of what happened in the past and in the present. Okay, yeah. And all this comes finally to the point in which you need knowledgeable people doing the assessment and analysis, analyzing that data. If you have all these features and you don't have a proper person to analyze it, then you're losing time. You're losing investment. And if you don't develop those skills, don't create those multi-skills in your engineers, you're really doing nothing.
Absolutely.
That's why it cannot be just an IT project.
Absolutely. Yes, I mean, you're so right. When you get this big amounts of data from the well coming so continuously, the experienced engineer just looking at trends can immediately say this well is having a problem with the gas lift. It's having a problem in the gas lift injection. This well is producing slugs, just by experience and looking at that. So training of staff, training of your engineers who understand the data is probably one of the first things you need to do, so that they can take advantage of all that information coming. So that's been an evolution. I think I've seen in asset teams today, there's a a young group of very brilliant engineers that already have had this experience of and they ask for it. I've seen it from our clients. They say, no, give me this dashboard, give me this trend. I want to see it in this way. And they're very specific on how they want to see the data. that facilitates for them a timely analysis of what's going on in the well. So we've moved on, just summarizing, we've moved on from just knowing or very low skilled people that just check the production of the well once a month. Now we have an enabled engineer that is every day continuously knowing what the status of their wells is. I can add another element to the picture is obviously we can add intelligent alarms, right? So the engineer doesn't even have to be looking at the information, looking at the trends. They can, alarms can be configured for him to be notified, okay, of any particular changes that he himself programmed in the system. Systems need to enable users to configure their own alarms in the way they want to be notified, and even be notified anywhere, in their mobile phone when they're on the go on the street, and so immediately they can go and check from anywhere where they are. So there's a big evolution on how things are done in the field.
And there is something I just want to point out and try to stress, the importance of the knowledge, okay? Because people that are looking at this, watching us in the channel, might think, okay, these guys are forgetting about machine learning, artificial intelligence, and so on, and I was waiting for this point to start talking about that. It is true
I was just about to ask you, Cesar. I was just about to ask you.
Yes. Well, it is a fact that this amount of data will help you to understand better the nature of the processes you are dealing with. Okay. Will help you to improve the way you forecast or you have your own prognosis, how the data is going to evolve and how it's going to behave, and this, with the entrance of the new technologies related to artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and all those things, there might be people thinking that now we can get rid of engineers, okay? And I believe this is a big mistake, because I think all those technologies will help you to even identify, anticipate problems, which is really a good thing. At the end of the day, you will have to concentrate engineers to evolve in their own knowledge and to go beyond where they are standing now. If I keep the engineers in the same way they are without learning something new, okay, eventually, yes, I can get rid of the engineers because I have a machine that is doing the same every time, okay? I think the challenge is to make those engineers to evolve, departing from the point they are, assuming that they have a big, huge of help thanks to this artificial intelligence, and go beyond, okay, to the new way of thinking, new ways to anticipate, new methodologies for measuring, how to really to get the last, let's say, dollar for that barrel, okay, to make an industry that is continuously evolving. Now it has a lot of competition from other areas as sources of energy, okay? But still, in the next 20, 30 years, the oil and gas industry will be preponderant, will be important, will be relevant in the energy mix worldwide. Okay, things will not change as there are many defenders of the transition. We're in a transition, that's true, but the truth is that right now probably 50% or 55% of the whole energy mix is just based on oil and gas. And in 30 years' time, okay, it will be reduced just a little bit because the population is continuously to grow, and we will use more and more energy, okay, and the source of energy will still be oil and gas, at least in the 50% of the whole matrix of energies. That means that we will continue to evolve, we will continue to develop new things, new ways to handle CO2, for example, that will impede treating the oil and gas industry as a dirty industry. Okay, I think technology will move forward and will enable all these new processes.
Yeah,
okay?
and being more efficient, and and
more
even
efficient.
contribute to running operations with net zero is perfectly valid approach that we can pursue. Yeah, I wanted to bring the topic, contributing to the machine learning topic. I mean, I think what I've seen is there's a lot of research and development right now on artificial intelligence in the topic of estimating real-time well production. I've seen a lot of initiatives out there using information from downhole, using information from the surface, combining first principle models and better measurements that are being developed out there with machine learning in what's been called a hybrid model, and combining the best of both worlds to produce an even better solution, even better than the things we have seen before. Multi-phase flow metering is an old topic already. I mean, a lot of companies produce their own equipment. It's been around for a while, but I think machine learning and artificial intelligence research is getting a lot into this topic. And I think, Cesar, in the near future, we're going to see a lot of deployments of, the Holy Grail, essentially knowing with a certain degree of error, which is acceptable, how much each well is producing in oil, gas, and water, and possibly sand. That's like, if we can get to that point, can you imagine what the future looks like in terms of managing a well? Now you're talking about looking, as you said, looking beyond. What are the engineers going to look at the forecast? At what's going to hit me next? What's going to hit me next week? It's not about today. Today it's under control. I've got the big picture, but it's really about the future. It's really exciting.
Well, it's quite interesting. In fact, I believe that the methods for measuring are going to be continuously evolving. Eventually, one day we will not see in the platforms, the typical volume separator, volume per volume, okay? Because the methodologies for measuring probably will evolve. You have new technologies right now. There are already many other technologies different to just volumetric, okay? But the issue here is that despite of those improvements, I mean, the reality, the physical reality of let's say the nature itself, okay, of the reservoir and the way you produce those fluids is quite complex, okay? Every single reservoir is different. Every single well behaves, because as I said, the characteristic, the geologic characteristic of every reservoir might be different from one to another. That means that the only way to really take advantage of this holy grail, okay, that is basically just measuring, is that having an integrated, let's say, modeling capability to understand the behavior of the reservoir, the downhole area, the wellhead, the surface. Okay, you have to see that in an integrated fashion to be able to really do proper forecast to see what's going to happen. If you're not integrating all those things, you might have a proper measurement and a forecast that will just be valid just for a very short period of time. That means if you are measuring continuously the behavior of a well, and you have a trend of the last 3 months, eventually you can do a forecast, an extrapolation from that behavior, okay? But, I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with the physics that are really happening inside the reservoir, because eventually in the next 3 months, you will have a water encroachment problem. Eventually you are measuring, this water cut, and then suddenly it goes up. Why? Because you were in front of a water encroachment problem and you were not expecting that. Yeah. Okay, the measurement in a continuous fashion does not allow you to really do that kind of estimation. You need to integrate all Absolutely. The models. For sure, if you had the capability to measure how the reservoir is behaving itself downhole, eventually you might say, okay, only based on measurement, I will be able to make forecasts. But this is not the reality.
No.
The reality is that you are taking some information, real information, true information, and then you are creating models, okay? And this quantity, massive quantity of data is helping you really to do better, for example, history match, okay? To analyze how this variable behaves thanks to the impact of that other variable. At the end of the day, it's a correlation factor. You are correlating variables to others and then understanding and bringing this comprehension to the new model you're creating.
Yeah.
Okay. And this model integrated with all this data is the key. And definitely, I'm very sure that these new ways to measure fluids, pressure, temperature, etc., will enable doing more, getting more data at a lesser cost, okay? And eventually this will be connected to other kind of tools, mathematical tools that will allow you to really visualize quadrants of where are the problems, you know, and say, okay, these different variables are indicating me that the well has these sort of problems, or the reservoir has this sort of problem. So it will speed up the diagnosis, the troubleshooting, the anticipation, and making action to improve that process.
No, absolutely. I mean, modeling is one of the topics on the second blog. We mentioned that modeling is very important, and well, we've known for a while now. It's one of the central elements, I think, of the digital oil field concept, that you have measurements, you have your models, but then your measurements, your real-time measurements, your well tests enable you to verify and validate those models. And only with validated models you can do predictions. Okay, you can do optimization with, say, surface models, and well and surface models. But then to be able to do any long-term forecast, you need to incorporate reservoir models, obviously, because that's where fluids are coming from. Exactly. And of course, at that level, you can be very simplistic with a material balance model, or you can have a sophisticated, fully, numerical model of the whole reservoir. And obviously, that technology has increased quite a lot. But then, as measurements, machine learning techniques to acquire inferred data becomes better, what becomes a challenge, and is something that needs to go hand in hand, is better techniques to match that reality, that measurement, with the validation of models. And also, going back to the pillar, engineers that understand how to do this. I don't know, in your experience, I mean, guys that really understand how to model a production system and understand what's going on, they're few and far between. I mean, you can't find these guys growing on trees, I tell you.
Well, that's true. Even though that, I think there are people with this integrated perspective, integrating different type of models. Okay, even there are tools right now. There are tools that try to do this integration. Okay, available to do that. But definitely, I think we are in a very interesting point. I don't know if you heard a few weeks ago somebody talking about that we reached the peak oil.
I've heard it a few times.
Yes, but recently there was a discussion. I think 2 weeks.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. No, okay.
And there was a discussion that we reached the peak point, and now we're going. And it's quite interesting because all these enabling technologies are right now available, plus these data visualization tools, all these technologies that we have now in our hands. It will be capable to really open a new era. Why is that? Because so far, what we have produced probably is less than 30% of the reserves, oil and gas reserves. Okay, and just imagine, by doing the things we have done so far, we already got 30%. Okay, eventually we have still a margin of 10% more, assume worldwide, to reach like 40% recovery factor, which is a big amount. But now, with all the data, we will be able really to discover new sources of oil, new entrampments, new places where to find oil. So I believe it's quite interesting because despite that we are in a competition with other sources of energy, now we are like refreshing ourselves. We have like a second youth thanks to the technology and the enablers that we have right now.
Yeah, well, it happened with shale. Remember, Cesar? I mean, they said that the U.S. peaked, remember, in the 70s? Traditional oil production peaked in the 70s. And indeed, it went down. It was a local maximum at that point. And then technology came in, shale, techniques for fracking and finding oil where before it was virtually impossible to extract. Yeah. And this whole thing exploded. And look at what happened now with the production in the U.S. It's up again. Now it depends on if they're going to get funding, if they're going to be allowed to do this or not. That's a separate topic. But the technology is there to even increase production beyond what was thought before.
I believe many companies, talking about the shale oil part of shale gas, many companies are still survive thanks that they have implemented, getting all benefit possible from data.
Oh, yeah.
And have optimized the number of wells. They have optimized the timing of wells. They have optimized the separation of wells. They have optimized the number of stages to fracture. I mean, there are so many things that have been enabled thanks to this integration. Again, you know, the four
Absolutely.
pillars,
Absolutely.
and with a dedicated people to improve their knowledge and their understanding of all these.
Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. That's amazing.
It is, you know, I think, I mean, the experience of shale from when it started in the United States until now, what I've seen is exactly that. At the beginning, operators were experimenting. Let's try this, let's try that. You know, a well, you would drill a well, fracture it, and it would die after a year. What happened here? You know, after all this trouble, it's only produced so much. And I think they have started to learn exactly what you said. You know, they take measurements, what worked, what is the optimal separation, what is the optimal drilling and fracking method, this and that. And nowadays they have fine-tuned this so much that they know exactly what to do. And not only that, Cesar, you know, if they can even drill a well and say, this well is for the future, I'm going to close it, I'll open it when later. So they can create inventory
Yes,
of production, you know, ready to go, ready
and they
to
know
tap
exactly
into.
how much do they have.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
so they ramp up and down very, very subtly, you know, very nimbly in what is an efficient operation. And
Yeah,
efficient operation means less cost. And less cost
exactly.
means that the company can continue operating, you know.
You see, I believe people thought that you know, with the low price of the current months, of the last months, a lot of companies were going to crash in the States. And in fact, something is happening. All those companies that were not well prepared financially are struggling, having many difficulties. But there are other many that really have improved a lot over the years and are surviving despite these lower prices.
Yeah.
Okay, that's amazing, and that's it suggests how the industry is somehow resilient and is able to transform itself. Okay, trying to
Yeah.
get the best every time. And again, I think right now it's happening something that I think we have to touch in another session, which is companies, you know, leaving people, or let's say, I mean, people going out of their work. I mean, they're being fired, let's say,
Mm.
okay, and because probably the companies are looking at that as a source of cost, okay. I believe the companies need to see people as a source of value, and if they are not providing the value in the place they are, they should reconfigure the whole organization and see where those people can add value. You know, particularly people with more than 50 years are being laid off, trying, you know, to optimize those costs. And I believe this is a great opportunity right now. I think the companies will have to address that to maximize how do they use that knowledge, as I said, because I think digitalization will not give you what a big brain, a good brain, and good knowledge can serve your processes.
And all the
It is
experience.
something that's a reflection that the all companies have to do. Probably the model is wrong, the way they're using that knowledge. Okay, but visualizing that only digitalization will solve the issues is a big mistake,
Yeah.
I think.
Well, you know what we've seen from Eigen is our clients run some of the most efficient platforms in the North Sea,
Yeah.
and I think it's no it is no coincidence that the fact that they invest a lot and they believe a lot in technology, on systems, actually from many different companies. They believe in integrating data from different systems, bringing it all together, enabling their engineers to make informed decisions. And you can see it reflected in their efficiency. You know, this blip in the oil price, it was like it didn't affect them. You know, they were prepared to ride the storm because their operating costs are so low.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think this is the first downturn, to be honest, when I've seen uh, management and you know, executive management in all companies really believing in the value of digitalization. I mean, really putting the money down
Yeah.
where it hurts, like invest to get the return from that technology.
That's it. I think right now it's a good moment, despite those oil prices that are low. I think that's a challenge, how to overcome that situation, how to be more efficient, how to take advantage of knowledge and technologies,
Yeah, well, not to mention the pandemic, which was another factor that was thrown in, and actually investment in remote access, systems accessible from the web, from anywhere, in your mobile phone, has been, it's paid off,
Yes.
investment in these technologies, and also having your staff used to that way of working. Having working from the desktop, from the interface, and not moving around, like you said, visiting the well like we used to do in the past.
Exactly.
And so the people that the companies have been that have been prepared for this way of working, they have now reaping the benefits.
Thank you so much. That was a very fascinating conversation. I could have interrupted more, but I didn't. So it was a brilliant conversation. Thank you so much. For anybody who's watching Eigen TV at the moment, please do by all means pop questions down below, and we will of course endeavour to get back to you as quickly as we can. Or if you've got like to speak to Cesar or Joel, then by all means visit eigen.co and just pop a request through to us, and then we can obviously filter that through to Cesar as well. But yeah, it's been amazing just listening to you both, and I very much enjoyed it, and I'm sure our audience will as well. So thank you so much.